Hello everyone, welcome back to Kirklees Guitar School. So today we're going to have a look at Life in the Fast Lane for the Eagles. Now there's two guitars laid over the top of each other for this. I'm going to teach you both parts, but in a way that if you're playing guitar at home by yourself you'll be able to play along to the record. Now I'll put the first bit up while I'm waffling. Now I've done this in such a way that when I get paid to go out and play guitar, there's not normally another guitarist on the gig, so I've got to try and make myself sort of play as many parts as possible, and I've taken this approach here. So that's the first bit. It then goes up the octave and then goes into the riff. So let's break it all down. We're going to start around 5th position with this. So what we're doing, 5th fret with the index finger on the A string, and we're then on the same string we're going to hammer onto fret 7 with his ring finger. Then with my ring finger, I'm going to rock the finger down onto the 7th fret of the D string. See what I did there? And then come back up. So 5, 7, 7, 7. And I don't know if you can see the music underneath the tabs. Those are all semiquavers. It's quite fast, but stick with it, it'll come. Then with the index finger we're going to play the 5th fret of the D string, and we're going to bend it just slightly out of tune. You don't want to bend it a full semitone. It's half of a semitone. You're just bending it out of tune just a little bit to make the listener's ears prick up. And you're only sticking there for a little while. Then you're going to go 7 and 5 on the A string. Now we're going to slide downwards into the 5th fret with the ring finger. Now you don't have to go from fret 7, but because your finger's hovering over fret 7, I'd pluck fret 7 and immediately slide down into that 5th fret of the low E string. Then you're going to index finger on the 3rd fret, pick it and bend it a little bit, and then open string. Now for the next 4 bars, it's very much variation on a theme, and it's all based around this lick. So if you're going to spend the most time, spend it here because it will help you for the rest of it. Take a screenshot if you need to. If not, we're going to have a look at the reciprocal lick, which if you just keep your eye on the tab, can you see how it's literally the same lick, but what we've done, let me go back, we've replaced the 0 at the end with a rest. So all of the notes are in exactly the same place. So let me just go back for a second. I'm going to play that lick and then I'm going to play it for a second time, but I'm just not going to play the 0 at the very end. Yeah, and that's the crux of the lick, okay? So we subtract in bar 2 the E note at the very end. Moving on, I've got bars 3 and 4 glued together. Now, bar 3 is exactly the same as bar 1, except we're going to do a little push. Now, what that means is when we push notes in music, we play the notes a little bit sooner than we anticipate them being, and a little bit before beat 1 of the bar. So looking at this, you've got the 5, 7, you know, those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, those first 9 notes up to and including the 0 are exactly the same as bar 1. Now rather than letting that 0 at the end of the first bar here on the screen, rather than letting that ring out for a whole beat, we're actually going to split that in half, so it lasts for half a beat instead of a full beat, and use the remaining half a beat, split it again into semiquavers, and we're going to play the 5 and the 7 like we would at the beginning of the lick. So it just comes a little bit, I just want you to, rather than thinking about quavers and semiquavers, if that sounds like Chinese to you, just think of it as you're just chopping a little bit off the end and gluing another bar onto the beginning. Yeah, how I sort of went into the start of the lick again a little bit prematurely. And then we continue the lick as normal like we would. And notice how there's no zero at the very end either. So. Sorry, I got a little bit muddled there. So what I'll do is, if you want to take a screenshot, look at the first 4 bars. That's what I've covered so far. Sounds like this. Granted, that push is a little bit harder to do on your lonesome without the record, but slow the record down in YouTube if you know how to. Right, so now would be a really good time to pause and get those first 4 bars under your fingers. If you are okay up to this point, we're going to start in the next part. Now, this is where the second guitar comes in. So, whichever guitarist, you know, is playing that part, the second one mirrors what they're doing after 4 bars up the octave. So the first guitarist, we go. I'm going to assume it's Joe Walsh playing that part. So he's going to do that. He would then play that again, while Don Felder, for argument's sake, I don't know which way round it is, let's just say that it's that way round, is going to play the exact same lick, but an octave above. So he's going to do this. You know, it sounds the same. But it's an octave above, and it creates this sort of like dual guitar thing that the Eagles were most that were known for. But rather than harmonising like they are in something like Hotel California, they're playing the same notes just at a different point on the neck of the guitar. So all that to say, let's have a look. Now this follows the same pattern. Can you see how bars 1 and 2 of this lick? The only difference is that 12 at the very end of the first bar is missing from the second and replaced with the rest. So let's start from the very beginning of that. We've got 12th fret with the index finger on the D string. And you're going to play 12, 14, index and ring. We're then going to bring the ring finger down to the G. Rocking down to Electric Avenue, and then bring it back up to that D string. 12th fret with the index finger and bend it. 14, 12 on the D. We're then going to slide from 14 down into 12. Notice how 14 is not listed. That's just because my finger's over the 14th fret. As soon as you sound that note, you're sliding into that 12. 10th fret with the index finger, bend it just a smidge out of tune, and then 12th fret on the low E string to finish the bar off. Sorry, we'll try that again. And then the second bar is exactly the same. Notice how I bent the 10 and didn't finish off on the 12. And you hear the reverb from my amp. We'll talk about tones in a second, but you hear the reverb on my amp filling that gap. I don't know if YouTube will compress the crap out of that or not. So that's the first half of the second part, if that makes sense. Then the reciprocal part to that looks like this. So just as before, it's the first lick, but then we push the ending to buy us a little bit more time for the ascending chromatic lick that we're going to talk about. So starting at the beginning, you've got the 12th fret to the 14 on the D again, rock down to the 14 of the G, back up to the 14th fret of the D, bend on the 12th fret of the G, 14, 12 on the D, slide downwards to the 12, 10 with a bit of a bend, and then the 12 with the ring finger. And then notice again how we've got the push. Starting into the second bar, we finish the lick as normal, rock down to the 14, back up to the 14, bend the 12, 14, 12, and then this is where it gets juicy. We're going to slide down to the 12 like we've done in the previous bar, and then we're going to bend the 10, and then we're going to carry on pulling that thread. Now what I'm doing there is I'm using the index finger for the bend on the 10, still bending it, middle finger on 12, ring finger on 13. Now the studious ones among you would use your ring finger for the 14. I'm just going to move my my ring finger up because we're going to a completely different position of the neck after we've done this. Again, now would be a really good time to either pause it here, or you could pause it there and have a look at the lick at the top. Okay. Unfortunately, I've had to cut this down into 2 slides because there's that much music. It's really tricky to. I couldn't get it all in frame enough for those of you that are looking on a tablet or a smartphone. It might just be a little bit too small for you. So far we've got. Then we go up. I missed that 14 at the end. Now we go into that sort of little boogie riff down at the bottom of the neck. Now, not trying to scare you off, but I do think this is the most challenging lick out of all of it to try and get the feel for it, because it's got a certain kind of bounce to it, okay? So we're going to play the low E string, and then we're going to pull off from the 5th fret to the 2nd fret. On the D string, not the G string. James wondered why it sounded a bit weird. So you've got low E, and then on the D, I'm actually using my pinky for this because it's quite a stretch. I'm pulling off from the 5 to the 2nd fret of that D string. Then you see how I've got 2 crosses. Now what that means is I'm going to palm mute. I'm also touching the string to stop it from ringing out. And I'm just going to do a quick down and an up stroke. Now I've seen a couple of different ways of doing this online. To my ear, that's what he's doing, but it's good enough for me. If it isn't, somebody could have an opinion on this that he's doing something slightly different, and I might take that on board. But this makes the most sense to me out of what I've looked at and what my ear's telling me that they're doing. So you've got. So I'm doing the clicks with a down and an up, and then immediately afterwards I'm playing the 2nd fret of the D string with a downstroke. Now it's meant to be a bit scruffy. Try not to be too clinical, otherwise it won't sound right. And following on from that, we're going to do a 0 on the D and hammer on to the 2nd fret and do that twice. Really cool little lick to practice. And then we're going to reciprocate in the 2nd bar. Still got the 0, the pull off to the 2, the 2 muted notes, and then the 2. But then we're going to finish with almost like a little bit of a. And I'm just doing 3 upstrokes and bending that G a little bit out of tune. Took me a minute to get, so I imagine it'll take you guys as well, but it's got quite a different feel to it, but it's cool. It's cool, enjoy it. So take a screenshot or pause the video if you need to. Alternatively, this is the last remaining 2 bars of what we're going to talk about today. So the first bar of this phrase is the same as the first bar of the previous slide. And just as before, you've got, in the 2nd bar, you've got the up to this point of the bar. You've got the 0, pull off, 2 clicks, and then the 2. And then we're going to press the 2nd fret of the D, and instead of playing like we did last time, we're going to play the 2nd fret of the D string, which makes that an E. We're going to pull off to the 0, and then with this middle finger, Just a slight variation, but again, I couldn't really find anybody else's tabs that did this justice. But to my ear, that's what it's doing. And that's when he starts singing. So, take a screenshot if you need to. Get that under your fingers. And take another screenshot if you need to. That's the second half of it. Now, if you're doing your job properly, that should take you up to where he starts singing. It should take you up to the verse. Great, based on a blues, but it doesn't have a sort of. You can hear them go to what we call the 5 chord, to that B chord, and it sounds really cool. Tones for this video, obviously I'm using a Strat. I think the limited research that I've done, I think it's a Strat and a Les Paul. I just got comfy with the Strat. I just got a good sound in the room today, so that's what I decided to use. I'm using the bridge pickup on this one because it is quite. It is quite snarky. What I've started doing is request from somebody else. Here's my amp settings. So this is what I use for my audio. I use a Boss Katana Artist Mark II with a line out, just going into a little interface. I'm using the crunch channel with a little bit more gain than you'd expect, but I'm compensating for the Strat. If you're using a guitar with humbuckers, maybe a little bit less. And kind of, that's just what sounded good in the room, really. So not quite 12 o'clock, but more like 11 o'clock. Just a splash of reverb. Bearing in mind, though, that... Take a screenshot of that if you need to. Bearing in mind, my settings sound great while I'm playing it, or at least I think so. But you could plug into that amp and it'll sound completely different. So it's a good place to start, but feel free to... and also, we're not all using those amps. Some of you have probably got much nicer amps at home that you're using. That's a guide, and then experiment from there. So I hope you enjoyed that lesson. This is a follow-on to the Whiskey in the Jar video and the Still Got the Blues video that I've done. I feel like this format's really working. Let me know in the comments if it helps you out or what you'd like me to cover next. And subscribe. We do 2 lessons a week, absolute minimum. And I've loads more stuff coming as we go into the summer. I'll catch you soon. Cheers.